So cultivated protein is not a completely different product itself. It's just a different production technology to create a similar product. We're actually talking about same real animal protein with the same nutritional composition, the same amino acid profile, same structure of the cells, but made in a slightly different way. And how we do this is the process starts with a small sample of cells from fish, because we are more focused on marine species. And, and these cells are then cultivated in nutrient-rich medium inside bioreactors, wherein they multiply into muscle cells or into protein-rich cells or fat cells.
Well, welcome to the Pet Food Science Podcast. I'm pleased you're here, and we have an interesting discussion today. We're going to talk with some experts about cultivated protein and how that works in the pet food science. I'd like to introduce Vincent and Ashwath, and I want them to tell us a little bit about themselves and how they got to this place. So we can start there, if you would.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thanks a lot for the invitation, Dennis, and I'm very happy to be here. My name is Vincent. I am the head of the alternative protein program at Nutreco. So Nutreco is a global animal feed company, typically operating on the interface of technological advancements and effective scale-up. And you will probably know us better in the pet food industry as Trouw Nutrition companion animal. Which is one of our leading brands. We're active across the globe, so we're more than 11,000 people, present in more than 30 countries. We make more than 9 million tons of animal feed. So we're in a lot of different places, but we are united by one purpose, and that is feeding the future. And in that context, I'd like to explain more today about the latest efforts in cultivated protein and also what that could do for the pet food industry.
Excellent. Ashwath, how about yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for having us here. My name is Ashwath. I'm a product manager at Umami Bioworks. My major focus is on the pet food category. And Umami Bioworks is basically headquartered in Singapore. And we are a marine biotechnology company focused on cultivated seafood. We are pioneering the development of cultivated fish products using our cellular agriculture technology. As far as our presence is concerned, we are headquartered in Singapore. We have offices in Japan, India, Europe, and North America.
At Trouw Nutrition, we blend our passion for customer success with our love for pet nutrition, bringing together the art and science of nutrition, ingredients, and blending. We're here to dream with you and help you create standout products. We're here to deliver for you with dry ingredient, pre-mixes, base blends, and specialty blends. And we're 100% dedicated to you with a complete focus on pet nutrition. See what Trouw can do for you at TrowNutritionPets.com.
Oh, that's fascinating. Well, this whole area really brings into pet food nutrition, because pet food, in the one hand, we really want to achieve a optimum nutrition for the pet, and we are always looking for ingredients and high value nutrients. And we want them to be, as best we can, of course, sustainable and able to have a strong supply chain. And so I think that really ties in well with what you all are doing. And maybe you can help us understand from where you are how this cultivated protein, maybe how it's formed and what might its benefits be.
Yeah, let's indeed dive into that. I completely echo what you say. Looking back at the 2026 Pet Food Conference in Atlanta, I think it was a representative from Innova Market Insights who actually presented some of the pet food market trends, where there was a clear focus on increased demand for functional nutrition and sustainable sourcing. Now, if we combine that with some of the things Trouw Nutrition companion animal stands for as part of Nutreco, I mean, we are a global leader in pet food blending, where we really have our own blending innovation center to make high value premixes and blends. And we really work together with the customers to find the optimal blends and ingredients, really to have the best functional properties for our pets. Now, in that highlight or in that context, it makes a lot of sense to also discuss cultivated protein, which is very early stage. It's a nascent industry, but I think it's worthwhile to highlight because I think it can be a tremendous opportunity to actually partner up within the space and drive some of the benefits forward.
Well, let's talk about that. How do you make those proteins? Is it let's help us out. Start with maybe here's what we need, and here's how we get there.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Maybe I can chime in. So let's be clear, but from the start. So cultivated protein is not a completely different product itself. It's just a different production technology to create a similar product. We're actually talking about same real animal protein with the same nutritional composition, the same amino acid profile, same structure of the cells, but made in a slightly different way. And how we do this is the process starts with a small sample of cells from fish, because we are more focused on marine species. And these cells are then cultivated in nutrient-rich medium inside bioreactors, wherein they multiply into muscle cells or into protein-rich cells or fat cells. So basically think of it as growing meat or fish directly from cells, but in a more controlled environment rather than through traditional animal agriculture.
Ashwath, I wonder if you could tell us more about this because it fascinates me. I've always thought as a nutritionist that what counts is not the ingredients, but the nutrients. So the nutrients are being delivered now basically very similar, if I understand it, but dive a little deeper if you will. Are these myelocytes or what kind of cells are these and what kind of medium are you growing them in? And perhaps just because I'm curious, how do you get that? You got to then separate it out to what you want to put in the pet food. Just walk us through the process a little bit, if you would.
Right. So think of these cells as some stem cells. So depending on the different species, we isolate different cells because different cells from different species grow at different rates. So we isolate these cells and grow them in a proprietary medium, which contains certain salts, certain amino acids, certain sugars. And this medium is proprietary. It's something that our scientists have come up with. And it's quite interesting in this that I would also like to add that we have our own proprietary machine learning model, which actually, based on the data that we generate, tells our scientists what kind of media to formulate for what type of cell line. And then these cells grow in different bioreactors. We start from small bioreactors, small flasks, move on to benchtop bioreactors, then towards even bigger bioreactors, 10 liters, 50 liters, and even 200 liters. And once these cells reach a certain growth stage, then we harvest them. And basically, this is what we call as our biomass. And this biomass can be made from different types of species. We are working on Japanese eel, bluefin tuna, and various other species. And this biomass is then provided to our customers. Because we are B2B, so we provide these ingredients to our customers who then do the formulation, marketing, the distribution. So think of this as the ingredient, the fish meat, the proteins and fats made from cells in bioreactors.
Yes, I understand that. So the final product then would be like a high protein spray dried meal. Is that what you deliver?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the biomass is actually in a slurry form. So it's kind of like a paste. It's slightly runnier, it's slightly liquidy. It's in a slurry form. And that's what we deliver to our partners. And they can then formulate it based on their requirements. They could either freeze dry it, they could have something like a powder, but it depends on what kind of formulation they want to. They could dilute it, they could create something like a broth, or they could use it in pâtés, or they could use it in any other format that they want to. They could even dry it to make kibble as well. So we are flexible on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. I could very much imagine putting that that through my extruder. And I mean, we use wet meat all the time. It's probably somewhat similar to that, maybe 25% dry matter, 75% water.
True.
And then what would be the nutrients? Would it be that on a dry matter basis, then would it be 40, 50% protein, 30, 40% fat? How does that break down?
That's a very good question. So what we do is we can actually customize the nutritional profile as per the requirements of our partners. So if they want a certain amino acid to be reflected in the end biomass, we can do that by tweaking the media. If they want slightly higher protein, let's say more than 11% protein, more than 20% protein, we can actually customize it based on the media. If they want more omega-3s, if they want more fatty acids, we could accordingly then tweak the media for the cells to reflect that. So it depends on the customer's requirements. Of course, there are biological limits, but again, it depends on the customer's requirements. So accordingly, we can then tweak the media for it to reflect that kind of nutritional profile.
Oh, that's fascinating. Do you use the same cells in that you're talking about changing the media to get a different output, but it's the same cellular growth that's going on. It's just being directed. Is that what's happening?
100%, yes. So we could change some of the parameters in the bioprocess, but essentially what helps the cells to reflect that kind of nutritional profile is basically what's fed to the cells. So the nutrient-rich media, if you're able to tweak it in a certain way, tweak some of the bioprocess parameters, accordingly, then they will be able to reflect that.
You know, I have another question that just comes to mind. I wonder what your thoughts are on it. We often use alternative proteins in order to have limited antigens. So, I think I don't even want to try and remember what the most common, allergic proteins are. I don't think fish is one of them. But do you have a change in antigen profile versus if you started out with a fish and then now you're taking cells from that fish to grow protein? Does that change the way the sort of antigens present to the pet?
Yeah, maybe I can chime in a bit. So without sort of the exact antigen knowledge, that will be more with Ashwath. But I think what's interesting to state here is the start of your question was actually about alternative protein, or actually what you see is that this actually is not an alternative protein. This is on a molecular level the same protein as the animal you took the cell from. So there's nothing alternative to it. The only thing that's alternative to this is the way how you produce it. And in this case, it's not cell growth within an animal, as we've been used to forever, but it's actually cell growth within a vessel, a bioreactor. And I think that is a key difference in this technique. And obviously, because this is a novel technique, it has its promises and its challenges, and I think it would be interesting to discuss some of them. But looking at it from the moon, I always say, imagine if you would make a part of a fish. Now imagine feeding that fish. What are you actually feeding? If it's a real animal, you're feeding its movement, its brain, its eyes, everything. In this technique, you can actually feed just the parts you want by taking a cell and manipulating that in the right way. And I'm not talking about manipulating in some scary ways, as you would see, but really getting the right metabolic expressions by feeding it in the right way. And that, I think, is a very promising technique which we can take forward.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So I just to sort of summarize, I think through this, the antigenicity probably doesn't change because you basically have the same proteins being presented. It's from a fish. It's going to be, unlikely to cause an antigenic response, but it's not like a hypoallergenic presentation. What do you think then? I'm curious, how you would even describe, say, if you were looking at chickens, and I could say, well, it takes me 2 pounds of dry food to make a pound of wet chicken. That would probably be a poor efficiency. They probably want 1 point something, but just taking it out. But that doesn't. I don't know how to do that calculation with the system you're talking. How do you look at efficiencies of protein production?
I mean, this is a topic which is front and center for Nutreco as a whole. We call this feed conversion ratio. And if you take a look at the feed conversion ratios of how we traditionally produce chicken, beef, pigs, I mean, you can define it in a number of ways, but Take chicken. Indeed, it's roughly 2 to 4, depending on exactly how you look at it. For pigs, it's roughly 4. For beef, it's 5 to 7, depending on the exact definition. With this setup, the promises are this can go to between 1 and 1.5. That is tremendous. And I think in aquatic species, also in the traditional industry, these numbers are already a bit lower. But for the livestock side, that is huge. The only thing is what needs to be pointed out is that a lot of this has not been proven at large scale yet, because that's not where the industry is yet. But the promises it holds, together with some other promises, that makes it, from my perspective, something that's really worthwhile investigating.
Yeah, so it seems that way too, just from an energy efficiency perspective. I totally understand what you're saying about all the energy loss in the normal production of meat, where many things go on and not a lot gets stored. So the energy efficiency is, of course, it's a biological system. It has to run towards energy used to make it work. And if many of those activities go away in like you said, respiration and activity and the normal energy uses, then of course you should be able to drive efficiency. But boy, that it does strike me as there's a lot here I don't know. So that's interesting.
Yeah, maybe to add on that, I mean, it holds many promises. I think given the efficiency, you can imagine you can also express that in terms of a price point. At scale, with that efficiency, that might actually cause a diversification of protein supply opportunity not yet encountered before. And that is, I think, something which is really worthwhile investigating. Typically, we say if we have the courage to feed the future, then we owe it to ourselves to explore all possible ways of feeding future generations. People and pets, and this is, I think, one of the very promising areas, and not just from an efficiency standpoint. There are others as well. I mean, this is something you could produce locally with all the different varieties. So you can imagine that you have an increased meat and seafood variety available to as pet food ingredients. It can increase the food security of different parts of the value chain and where you are. And you just heard Ashwath already mentioning the ability to express certain nutritional profiles through media or bioreactor processing. You would be able to adapt a product to meet specific specifications, expressing more omega-3s, these type of things. So it has actually quite some interesting benefits. And maybe to finish on sustainability, there was an article in Science in 2020 from Michael Clark, which actually talks about the global food system emissions, where he basically sketches that, okay, imagine if all fossil fuels would be eliminated tomorrow, then still to get to 1.5 or 2 degrees of global warming, we would need to have tremendous improvements actually in the additional pressure on the food system. This could actually be a way of helping meet those targets to sustainably feed the next, billion of pets, 2 billion of people. And I think if I've seen, once again, these are all promises and not yet proven, but I've seen some data from the Global Food Institute, or the Good Food Institute, I should say, which states that this could be up to 90% less air pollution, less land usage, 70% less water, these type of figures. And that is, once again, worthwhile exploring further.
Oh, it is fascinating.
So, maybe I can add a little bit to what Vincent mentioned. Some really important points there, especially regarding protein diversity. So many of our customers usually come to us with a couple of problems. One is protein diversity. And through this cultivated technology, we can unlock abundance from species that are not easily available. For example, species that are endangered, like Japanese eel. Usually in the market, you have certain species, chicken, beef, but through this technology, you can actually add more innovative products from different species to the product portfolio. So that's a very important point that I would also like to emphasize on. Apart from, as he mentioned, protein supply, because we do have to keep up with the supply demand. And this particular technology can actually aid the conventional sources to bridge that supply demand gap.
So is anybody buying this today? I mean, is it anywhere close in any place to somebody putting this in a food, either pet food or human food?
Yes, and actually you can find the examples by just pressing cultivated protein into Google. So there are companies who are actually now B2C selling pet food already. There are companies which have actually regulatory approval to sell cultivated protein for human consumption as well. Actually, in the US, you have a number of companies. I know one who are selling cultivated salmon. I've seen cultivated meatballs, bacon, sausages, chicken. There are different regulatory approvals and things already being sold. In Sydney, there's a company, or actually in Australia, I should say, there's a company actually selling cultivated quail, foie gras. As well, and in Singapore you also have a bunch of approvals where actually this is being sold. But once again, these are very limited still in volume, but the promises these hold, that is tremendous. I think what's the most interesting question is, if this all sounds so promising, why is it not on our plate yet today, or on the plate of pets?
Yeah,
right?
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, what are we missing, right? So I think there are a number of challenges, right? This is a nascent industry. It's very innovative, very new, and it holds promises, but it definitely also has its challenges. I think one of them, and maybe Ashwath can tell a bit more about it, is technical. The interface between a bioreactor, a cell line, and the media. So Ashwath, do you want to expand a bit on that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So scaling from lab to industrial production volumes while maintaining quality and efficiency is actually a technical challenge. So current challenges also include like optimizing cell line productivity, developing food grade scaffolds, structured products, achieving high density cell cultures in large bioreactors. So, and also there was a study in one of the journals which identified like media cost reduction and bioreactor productivity as the critical challenges and critical path items forward. So this is one challenge, and along with the technical challenge comes another challenge intertwined, which is the economical challenge. So basically achieving cost competitiveness with traditional available protein sources. So that also becomes a challenge because of the scale up issue as well. But as we scale, again, economies of scale will kick in, and then hopefully the prices will be at par with conventional sources.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating and very, very promising. What do you see if you look out in the future? How do you see the process happening next? If people are out there, sounds like it's kind of a niche market. Maybe someone's got a better marketing than I first see for this. Someone who maybe wants to really buy this particular ingredient stream that you have so many good things to say about it. But how do you see it developing?
Yeah, so we see this cultivated protein basically as an additional protein ingredient in our pet food formulations. So it's basically another high quality option for the formulator's toolkit. So for particularly for premium products, where increasingly, if you see, pet parents are seeking novel, nutritious ingredients. So in case of cats, which are obligate carnivores, they require certain specific amino acids like taurine, which are abundant in fish protein, and we can express them at levels that the customer requires. So our products can basically provide the complete amino acid profiles. And likely this role will evolve over time. It also depends on your inclusion rate alongside with traditional proteins to deliver more innovation while also managing the costs as well. And one more thing that I would like to mention here to the antigen issue, which you brought up earlier. So most of these antigens actually are derived from certain parasites. But what happens is when you produce this in controlled environments, you can circumvent all those challenges. So you're able to produce in a more sustainable, consistent way, and in a more localized fashion as well. And in the long term, the way I see this is the ability to customize nutritional profiles based on breeds, based on age, based on their health specific needs, and whether it's supporting, let's say, omega 3s for senior dogs or creating hypoallergenic fish protein, which would be good for joints, which would be probably good for brain health. So this is where I see this adding more value. at the same time while offering variety of protein sources and while being very localized, circumventing supply chain challenges. So there are a number of benefits that we can actually achieve through this technology, through this cultivated protein technology.
Yeah, and from my perspective, Dennis, it's more of an maybe more of an outside-in perspective. We're with roughly 1 billion pets, and the human population will grow, according to the latest United Nations prospects, to roughly 10 billion by 2050. So with roughly 0.8% year-on-year growth. Protein consumption is actually growing even quicker. Now, in order to feed all of this, we need every available source of protein. And then we take a look at this and the potential it has. And then the question is, okay, would you feed your pet a similar, or actually the same on molecular level product, which is actually healthier, with a better nutritional profile for a better price? And then I understand it's novel, but so if I ask 2 external sources, I get 3 answers because it's so unclear yet how quickly it will go and etc. But I'm convinced that this will actually have to play a role, and I think we owe it to ourselves to continuously innovate to find the highest quality and sustainable ingredients, well, to feed the future. And this is, I think, a very promising one. How quick it will go, that's the question. But that's also a call to action from us, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine an innovative company desiring to settle, production near your sites. So once I'm really not excited about, taking slurry and from Singapore and making it here in Wisconsin. But if I have a slurry nearby, then suddenly those transportation costs become really low. And so, yeah, lots of things to work through on the business side. I wonder if you could, talk about personnel a little bit. I mean, are you looking for people who might want to work in this industry, and what kind of person? If you see it grow, and maybe the jobs aren't there yet, but the jobs are coming, what kind of person might you say, I want this? I would like someone with these characteristics.
Maybe the first thing to do is actually take a look at sort of the business model from Umami Bioworks, and then work further from there.
What would you like to see happen? What's the best way that you would see this develop?
So from my perspective, this is really an industry with many promises, which is waiting to scale. So I think there's a huge opportunity for established players willing to collaborate to set up a production platform together with other players in the value chain. Because this is such a nascent industry, we need to actually work together, build on our joint strengths to actually get this going. So the last thing which we need to do is indeed ship, as you mentioned, slurry from Singapore to the US. I don't think that will be very price competitive. Now, I think what we need to do is think about, okay, how do we set up a production platform in this type of way? What kinds of competencies, what do we need for something like that? What type of people do we need for something like that? What type of feed and blending do we need for something like that? That's where Nutreco can play a role. And then how do we actually connect the players in the value chain to actually make use of this new piece of technology? And I think Nutreco can play a role there from the blending and the feed perspective, because we know actually what kind of nutrition goes into this program actually, and see, okay, what do these cells need exactly in terms of nutritional profile? I think we need, for example, from Umami Bioworks, expertise on the bioreactor setup, the media formulation, so the feed formulation for that specific cell line, downstream processes. And we would need industrial partners, some of the big pet food companies, who might actually would like to work with us to actually diversify their own protein supply source and actually work on functional benefits and sustainable sourcing. So I think many opportunities exist to incorporate this healthy and nutritious ingredient into our industry.
I think many pet food companies are interested in a sustainable and reliable protein source. That just rings completely true. So certainly there's a lot of potential here. I can see that.
And I think the exact way how something like that can work, I think that's something we can discuss. And that's, I think, also our call to action. I mean, we are very much interested in the space. And I think this is a space that's waiting to be developed further. So you now have startups, scale-ups, a bit larger companies actively working on how such a model would look. You have some larger established players like Nutreco also looking at this from basically a global supply chain perspective. Like, okay, how do we set that up? And I think that's the moment we're now.
Well, let's just ask. I mean, I'm assuming you're very available if someone started looking, but why don't you just tell them somebody's out there, they're listening to this, and they say, I want to talk to you about further development. How would they do that?
Well, first of all, I think they can always just contact me. That's
okay.
easy. And the good thing is, I mean, I'll let Ashwath talk about Umami, how they can contact him. But for me, I mean, I am part of Trouw Nutrition, right? So of Nutreco. So we are already in connection with many of the customers in this space. I think this is something that's worthwhile exploring. So I think the first next step is understanding which of these parties would have interest in something like this, which I think can be a very sustainable competitive advantage in the space. And I'm actually looking forward to developing that further. And as in any new industry, there's always a degree of risk. If we work with larger established players and combine that with the good technology some of our partners can provide, I think we can de-risk those approaches in a tremendous way. And that's, I think, the call to action, at least I would like to push out there. So if you have any questions or any interest to develop the space together with us, please reach out.
Ashwath, do you have any ideas on that whole sort of development?
Sorry, yeah. So from Umami's perspective, you can always reach out to us via our website, via LinkedIn, and even for us, the call to action is basically to consumers and to pet parents. Or tell them to be curious. When cultivated protein products reach your market, try them, give feedback, understand that these early products might be slightly premium, but you're supporting the development of a technology that could transform our food systems. And even for fellow entrepreneurs or scientists, my call would be to collaborate more, because the industry will only succeed faster if we share our learnings, work together on certain challenges, and then we can create a rising tide that can lift all boats. So that's my call to action, to collaborate more, to partner more on these technologies, so that we can transform our food systems and give even more better, having more benefits, health beneficial products to our pets.
Okay, to wrap up, from your perspective, how do you see cultivated proteins developing? And how could the industry start engaging with this new ingredient source?
Yeah, great question. So we have multiple modes of engagement with our partners, as we are a B2B startup. One of our modes of engagement is a pure supplier-buyer relationship, wherein we provide the ingredients, the cells, biomass, proteins, fats to our partners, and they do the end formulation, the prototyping, product development, and also the marketing and the distribution. So we play by our strengths and they play by their strengths. Second mode of engagement is more of a joint development agreement, wherein we co-create products and prototypes. And again, they do the marketing and distribution. One of the other ways in which we work is by licensing our core tech to our partners, the cell lines, the media, the bioprocess technology, and then they can produce proteins in a localized fashion in their own facilities. So this is the last mode of engagement that we have. And then we just license our tech to them, and then they can continue on operating the system.
Vincent, what do you think about it? Is that your perspective, or could you add anything there?
I think it's the good thing about this is that there are different methods available, also depending on how quick and how radical may be the wrong word, but how deep customers want to invest in this as well. I mean, this is something new, and I think first movers can have a tremendous competitive advantage if we can get this right. So I think it offers a variety of engaging with this industry, from purely using biomass for R&D purposes to actually incorporating the technology and actually making it exclusive to yourself for a certain part, and actually drive the industry forward in that way. So there are different modes available. We will support all of them. But I think the call to action is, please help us build this industry.
Well, I think that's very interesting, and I've enjoyed learning a little bit more about this and understanding some of the challenges and some of the possible, really exciting benefits. Let's call it a day. I'm glad to meet both of you today. So thank you for coming and being part of the Pet Food Science Podcast. I'll look forward perhaps to further conversations as this moves towards the larger scales you're talking, because I think it's probably going to be something we can follow closely over the next few years.
Many thanks, Dennis. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.